Thank you. Thanks, Jack. It is weird standing here and not having a keyboard in front of me. I feel a little vulnerable. 900 set lists, in case you're wondering. That's how many set lists I've led here for you all. So, and for me. Yeah. I thought that was kind of cool when I was looking back on the number. I was like, wow, that is a lot of years and a lot of songs. So, I just first want to say thanks for being here. You guys, it's Thanksgiving break. I hope you all had an awesome Thanksgiving with your families, and I pray that it was a blessed time. So, this morning, I decided to call this Karaoke Sunday. So, we're not going to do karaoke. Just set your mind at ease, take a breath. Although some of you are probably like, really? I'm going to belt my favorite 80s tune right now. It's going to be awesome. And I've heard that Jack is the best at karaoke, which it's kind of like opposite world, right? Because aren't the best karaoke singers the ones that everyone's like, whoa? So anyway, I just want you to know that you are here for a reason, that God brought you here this morning for his purpose, and he wants to do something in your life this morning and in mine. So just to give you a little bit of background of how I started leading worship, I started leading worship by default because I was the only one in my little circle that could play an instrument. And so they were like, hey, why don't you play this song? And we did the craziest songs, you guys. We did, hand motions and just these wild, crazy songs. My brother and I ended up then leading worship at a bunch of different church camps. And for years, he and I would travel around and lead worship for these kids, and it was a blast. I fell in love with worship music, though, when I was mowing my grandma's lawn, and I had my Discman. So, Quentin, you can ask your parents later what a Discman is. But I had the Hallelujah Glory CD from Vineyard, which some of you may remember. I'm pretty sure it came out in 91, 93-ish. And I remember mowing the lawn, and I'm like, I've got it blasting because the lawn, which is probably why I can't hear these days. But I'm listening to it, and I'm like, what is this? This is so amazing. There's drums and electric guitars, and I've never heard anything like this. And it just struck a chord in me that really made me fall in love with Vineyard worship music particularly, and that was 20 some odd years ago. And I still love Vineyard music, and there's a lot of music that has come out of Vineyard that we all listen to and love and appreciate. So I want you all to know that I can't do what I do up here. Travis can't do what he does. Jason, when he leads us, can't do what he does. All of us here that lead you can't do what we do without you. Otherwise, it would be karaoke. And this is a reciprocating thing. We go back and forth. We lead, you sing with us. It is a corporate act when we sing together. And the definition of worship, just basic dictionary definition, is to ascribe worth. And so, for me, I've come to realize that worship is a lot more than just music. Worship is a lot more than just getting up here and singing or turning on my favorite worship song at home. It's more than a liturgy, which I know some of us grew up in. I grew up singing hymns every Sunday. We had an organ and a piano because we were progressive in the Church of Christ. We had instruments, so that was it though. Guitars did not enter the church, and drums would have just probably burst into flames. Anyway, I grew up on hymns, and I love hymns. They will always have a special place in my heart. But I realized encountering Vineyard worship that worship is a lifestyle. It's a daily, ongoing thing that happens in us, and it's a reciprocation between us and God. And our very nature as humans is to worship something. So I think we all struggle with that concept. It's hard not to worship money. It's hard not to worship possessions. It's hard not to worship big houses. It's hard not to worship our kids being successful. There's so many different things we can worship, and just because we're human, we are designed to worship something. So Worship is really about being constantly aware of the presence of God, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. And I just want to talk for a second about the power of music. So I went to a wedding yesterday, and I was cracking up because, the wedding's going on, it's beautiful, and then the couple goes back to take communion, and they decided to play Reckless Love in the background while they're taking communion together. And the pastor had talked about just love that we don't deserve, and it was so beautiful, and all of a sudden, all you can hear is just sniffles everywhere. And you look around, and there's just tears, and people are like, what's happening? And I don't understand what's going on. Why am I crying? All of a sudden, I'm crying. And so music is powerful. And then I was just thinking of the irony of, had we gone to the reception then, and there had been no music, what would we do? Just eat dinner and sit around and stare at each other, I guess, and have conversations with strangers, which is fine. It's fine. But what is a wedding reception without the YMCA? I mean, seriously, right? So there's a lot of different ways to worship God. Psalm 147 says it's a good thing to sing praise to our God. I was thinking about, again, the power of music. Like, when Steve was playing football, they had the music is blasting in the stadium, right, in the pregame. And I just thought, how boring would that be if they're just out there stretching? But music gets in us, right? It changes our mood. It changes how we feel. It changes the atmosphere of where we are. And so he says it's a good thing to sing praise to our God. Are all of us good singers? Probably not, but I don't think it really matters a whole lot. Psalm 100 says, on your feet now applaud God. Bring the gift of laughter and sing yourselves into his presence. So I know y'all sing in your shower, because everybody does, right? So this thought of singing ourselves into his presence, I just thought was such a beautiful concept, a beautiful idea. If you're anywhere in the mental health world right now, or if you've stepped foot into Barnes & Noble anytime recently, you see this whole section called mindfulness, right? And it's all about taking care of yourself and making sure you invest in yourself and making sure you do something nice for yourself. And we live in this world where it's chaotic, right? Like, how many times do you ask someone, how are you? Or you yourself, how's it going? And we're like, oh, I'm so busy. I'm just so busy. I'm so busy. And whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's whatever it is, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And my go-to is, I'm just trying to keep up with the kids. I mean, 4 kids, crazy schedules. I've got a senior in high school. I'm trying to enjoy every minute. I'm just trying to keep my head above water, man. And I don't know if we've maybe created a life for ourselves that we then need to do this mindfulness self-care thing to escape from a little bit, right? Like, and those things aren't bad. I mean, some of the things that I personally do, and I know people that do, take a bath, read a good book, go on a hike. For Steve, it's cooking, which I will never understand. But basically, any hobby or activity that takes you away from your current reality and allows you to recharge and plug in and refill yourself so that you can keep giving, that's what this is. And I just thought how interesting it would be to maybe view worship as an act of self-care, as an act of mindfulness. Because if you're really worshiping, you're really aware of the presence of God, right? And you're really aware of who you are in the presence of God. And so how much would we act differently if we were constantly immersed in the presence of God? If we knew that I am his child and he is my perfect father. And man, I watched this girl walk down the aisle yesterday. She has 2 dads that have quit on her. 2. And my heart just broke as I watched her be ushered down the aisle with someone that we didn't even know. He was the photographer, you guys. And I thought, this isn't right. That's not okay. But what happened is she walked into the arms of this man who is so in love with Jesus. And she is so in love with Jesus. And I thought, oh, there's the redemption right there. There's the redemption. And then they worshiped together, taking communion during the ceremony, and it was the most beautiful, beautiful thing. And I don't think there was a person in that room that wasn't moved by it. So there's a verse in Psalm 34, and I'm taking all these from the Message, which we jokingly call the Street Bible, because, anyone can understand it. But Psalm 34:9 says, worship God if you want the best. And so I was thinking about this yesterday, about how, and it also says worship opens the doors to all of his goodness. And I was thinking about how when we want to take care of ourselves, right? We want to be filled. We want to be joyful. And when we worship, we get the best. It says it right there. It opens the doors to all of his goodness. Worship is so important, you guys, in your own well-being. So Psalm 64:10 says, good-hearted people make praise your habit. And a few years ago, I did a talk on how when nuns have their black and white thing that they wear, I don't know if there's another word for it, but the actual word is habit. It's called a nun's habit. I saw a nun the other day in Costco, and I was like, what are you doing here? Because we just don't see them that often here, right? Like when we lived on the East Coast, we saw them on the streets all the time, and we saw the little Jewish guys with their little funny hats, with their little curly cues. And it was pretty common, but here, I was like, there's a nun in Costco? Like, do they buy groceries? I don't know what a nun does. I don't know. But I do know that every morning, they get up and they look at their closet, and they go, what am I gonna wear today? And it reminds me of the Bee movie, right? It's like black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. I think I'm gonna go with black and yellow. Change it up a little bit. Or whatever he says, yellow and black. Anyway, when a nun goes to her closet, she doesn't have a lot of options on what to put on, right? Her physical clothing is all the same. And I wonder what if we woke up with that same concept of, I'm gonna put on the habit of worship. I'm gonna put on the habit of being, just saying good morning to God, right? Like, how much more would our whole mentality change throughout the day when it's 7:09 in the morning, and I swear to you, the clock goes immediately from 7:09 to 7:20 in my house in the mornings. So we go from, hey, you need to get out the door in a minute, to you're now 10 minutes late. I don't know how it happens. It's a magic clock, apparently. But if in that chaos, I was aware of the presence of God, and I already had an attitude of worshiping him, would I treat my kids different? Would I treat Steve different? Would I treat the tire on my car that keeps going flat every single morning different? Would I be more grateful that I have a car to drive? I don't know, maybe. I don't know if y'all do this, but sometimes I run out of stuff, and I'm like, I don't really know what to say. I don't really know what to sing. Jack's been having me do worship at our staff meetings, and most of the time I get here and I'm like, I don't know any songs. Like, how 900 set lists, I know some music, right? But every time I'm like, I feel like I just run out. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to sing. And there's this book called Draw the Circle that we did in WOW a few semesters ago. And it's a book on prayer. I would highly, highly recommend it. But this guy says when he gets stuck in praying and worshiping and what do I say to God, and he literally thanks him for every single thing that keeps him alive in that moment. So it's hilarious, actually, because he talks about the organisms that form amino acids to molecular properties of water. God, thank you that you brought, I don't know what it is. What is it, Riker? 2 H's and an O together to make water so that I can drink it, so that my body can be hydrated, so that I can, you never run out of things when you're worshiping him and thanking him for just the things that keep you alive in this moment. God, thank you that my heart is beating. Thank you that there's blood pumping through my body. And as ridiculous as it might sound, that is worship. That is worshiping him. So it becomes, again, an ongoing exchange of provision and praise, right? He's providing, we're praising. He's providing, we're praising. He's providing, we're praising. So in Acts 16, if you've ever read the story of Paul and Silas, They were worshiping him in the middle of prison, right? They got thrown in prison, and I think it was midnight-ish. It was dark. There's maybe some conversations about what it was actually like for them being tied up. Possibly their bodies were being stretched or contorted, or, really, really, really uncomfortable. Have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. Really, really dark times. And my reaction is, I'd be crying. I'd be like, God, get me out of here. I'm gonna die. I'd be terrified. And they sang. And not only did they sing, but it says they sang a robust hymn. Robust means strong and loud, and you're not like, they weren't just, they're in their chains like, amazing grace. I hope he hears me. Seriously, they're belting it out. And I thought, am I willing to worship God in the darkest of times? And yesterday being at that wedding and thinking, man, this poor girl's dads, both of them, did not show up to this wedding, and yet she worshiped. And yet she worshiped out of heartbreak. And I think that's why the entire room was moved, because we all knew. We all knew she got walked down the aisle by a stranger. But she worshiped. She still worshiped, and God's presence was there, and it was beautiful. So will you praise God in the midst of heartbreak? Will you worship him in the midst of your own prison cell? We sing the song, Break Every Chain. There's power in the name of Jesus to break every chain, break every chain. You guys, worship brings healing. I know this because I've experienced it and I've seen it in other people's lives. Worship brings healing. Worship brings restoration. Worship breaks the powers of darkness. We just sang that today. Worship brings restoration. Worship restores our energy. It restores our faith. Worship is so powerful, so powerful. It brings joy. I love It Is Well. We sing it as well a lot. Maybe we sing it a little too much, and you can tell me if there's a song or two that we sing too much. You can let me know. Because there's someone next to you going, oh, I wish they'd do that song again. Because that's always how it is. And always, the worship team, right, Travis, we get so tired of songs before you do, because you hear them once a week, and we practice them all week long, and we're like, oh my gosh, if I hear Reckless Love again, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then we sing it, and then we see people cry, and we see people grab Kleenexes, and we're like, okay, God's still moving on this song. It's not about me. So anyway, as we move to this next part of church, which obviously we know is worship, I want you all to know that I don't judge you for how you worship. There are so many different ways to express worship, right? We can raise our hands. Honestly, I feel weird when I raise my hands. I do. And this is my job, and this is what I love. It's what I'm most passionate about. But I still feel like I'm just going to go here for a little bit, and then I might go here, and then, I don't know, maybe I'll raise it all the way. If I'm really feeling it, I'll raise it all the way. But you're not the only one that struggles in this area. And I want you to know that. And I've had people come up to me with tears coming down their face, and they look at me after worship, and they just go, thank you. And they walk off. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they sat the entire time during worship. I've had people come up to me and say, I was raised in this tradition, and this is all just weird to me. It's weird for me to even sing out loud, but just know that I'm with you, and know that I feel God when you're up here leading worship. And I love that. And I don't have 1 ounce of judgment towards how you decide to worship. I want to challenge you to pray and ask God what his heart is for you on this. We are getting ready to go into this Advent series, and it's called Humble King. And I was thinking, as I was getting ready for this, I was thinking about how Jesus is sitting on a throne, right? He's like got angels around him singing his praise. He's sitting next to his Father. He's like, they're just hanging out in heaven. And then God's like, hey, so humanity kind of blew it. Would you be willing to do this? And he's like, a baby? Like, I can't even come in on a white horse or something cool? This isn't really what Jesus said, just so you know. This is not from the Street Bible. This is just my thoughts on what would I think if, talk about humility, right? Yeah, you're gonna go to earth to save humanity because they're lame and they screwed it all up. Oh, and you're gonna go as a baby. You're not gonna have any clothes. You're not gonna be able to talk. Let's talk about humility, right? And yet I still feel silly to go, Jesus, you're awesome. I love you. Come on, right? Is it okay for me to raise my hand sometimes? Is it okay for me to maybe look a little silly? Is it okay for me to worry about the person next to me who might be hearing me sing? Oh my gosh. You guys, that's why we turn it up in here. Seriously, because we don't want you to hear yourself. We just don't want you to have to worry about that. It's for real. We really do that on purpose. So it's okay to sit. It's okay to stand. It's okay to kneel. It's okay to raise your hands. We have all these response places set up for you to participate in as an act of worship. We have the one-day offering. That is a huge act of worship. There's so many different ways to worship. But I believe that something happens in music, and I believe something happens when we lift our voices to the King of Kings. I believe that heaven's open. I believe he speaks to us. I believe he softens our hearts. And I believe he molds us into more of who he is. So we're gonna practice some worship. So if y'all want to come up, my friend Travis is leading us today. He's an old new friend. He's not old. He's an old friend with new connection. We met at a Estes Park worship leaders retreat probably, 10, 11 years ago. And anyway, so I asked him to come and lead because I know that he does tap in to the Spirit. And so I want to encourage you all to let him lead you, to let this team lead you into the presence of God. We do this together as a corporate act of worship. And maybe try something new. Maybe try something new. I don't know anyone who's ever died from doing this or doing this. So just try something new and just see. If you raise your hands and you feel like an idiot and nothing happens, you don't ever have to do it again. It's not like a new requirement in the vineyard. That would be funny, wouldn't it? Oh my gosh. So as he humbled himself for us, can we humble ourselves for him? Take care of ourselves, invest in ourselves, and just be in his presence. So would you stand, and I'm going to pray. We're going to get started. God, we just thank you for your presence. Thank you that when your presence is here, things change. Thank you that when you enter a place of worship and there's people raising their voices to you, that things change. And that there is power in your name, God. Thank you that there is power in your name. God, we worship you and we honor you. We ask that you would fill us. We ask that we would be like plugged into a wall and that you would be recharging our batteries right now. Give us your grace. Give us your courage to worship you with abandonment. And we just lift our voices to you, Jesus, in Jesus' name.